Conference Finals between the Suns and Sonics, and a little special Barkley Legacy podcast. But first, let's go first thoughts with JB.
Damn. Here we are. I've got the Ninja Turtles mask on today. So, yeah, another week down. The COVID stuff is still really crazy. Everybody's at home. Everybody's not working anymore. And we're trying to figure out how to navigate it. But yeah, it's today was a depressing day. We're going to talk about it later, but Bernie dropped out.
Yeah.
So that's affected my entire mood today.
Not a depressing day.
Yeah, okay, Johnny. And yeah, man, but excited to be hanging out with some people that I don't hate, and just another day in the books of the quarantine era.
Don't hate you either, Justin. Thanks for that. Johnny, first thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great day.
Probably first thoughts into the mic would be probably
Yeah, that's a good idea.
podcast
Great.
rookies over here, huh?
Great day in the world of the semi-conservative people, which I'm not really putting myself there, but stock market shot up as Bernie was out. Shot up like 500
Oh
points.
my God!
Like 500 points.
This was not supposed to be first
God
thoughts.
damn it!
No coincidence. That was
Yeah.
a Fox News headline.
Yeah, I was like, I honestly, I didn't hear about it too early, but I hope Bernie does the right thing, and Justin might agree with this. Do not give the money to the DNC. Save it make a war chest for someone else that's Bernie like. I like Bernie better than Biden, straight up. So as I talk crap about Bernie, I could live with a Bernie and with him having a VP that was like very opposite of Bernie to a degree to kind of keep some balance.
But Johnny, how are you? We're interested in how you're doing. We want.
I got so excited about the Bernie news, man. I
this
just
is
don't
the
know what
first-
to talk about.
we want to know where you're at emotionally
this is
and
the
where
first
you're at
thoughts.
in the COVID world.
COVID has been so good for me. Everything is good. I'm getting in shape.
Jeez
I
Louise.
bought a warehouse. I'm making money. It's having an opposite effect on me for some
This
reason.
is the worst person right now.
Sean
It's
Sean
just-
Spain.
I'm
We
being
couldn't
honest.
get to you faster. First thoughts with Sean Spain.
Well,
Someone didn't read the email.
the newness is wore off now with COVID, but the uncertainty is definitely still there. Still learning how to maintain and navigate my career through online learning and stuff as a teacher. Today was the first time that we saw through Zoom. A lot of people are using Zoom now. Today was the first day I was able to see my basketball players. So much has been focused on the classroom, but seeing the basketball guys, that was definitely the highlight of the day. Just their hair's growing out, just like all of y'all's are. But
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
Thanks for noticing.
Learning to cut my own hair.
Dustin, how are you? We gotta get to that. I mean, how are you?
I'm great. I have thanks for asking. No one ever does these days,
You're welcome.
But I found a new park by my house that is no longer open, but I can sneak in through another apartment and go find the park. But yeah, it's been weird times, but it's been good. I think we've been able to spend more time with friends. The four of us have done 3 or 4 Zooms. Old friends has been good to reconnect, and so trying to reestablish priorities has been good in trying times. But they don't want to hear about our personal stories. Let's
they want us to get down to brass tacks.
that's right.
And
So
the person not here, Alex.
and Alex,
Shout out to Alex.
shout
How are
out-
you doing, Alex?
Shout out Alex in Romania. How many of your favorite podcasts have a Romanian dude involved? None.
one hopefully. So first off, starting with COVID-19, we still have the 2 hours a day Donald Trump briefings. I wanted to start off with the COVID things, with your thoughts on mail at home, with the election coming up, and what your thoughts are. Obviously, Trump came out with a strong statement against it, and what some of y'all's ideas are of what's the right thing to do in this situation. JB, again, I'll start with you.
Man, it's a tough situation for everybody, but right now, if you're encouraging people, and I don't give a shit what it's for, like if you're encouraging people to go vote and you're encouraging people to go stand close to other people, then in large groups, that's irresponsible. So I can't speak on whether the mail-in ballot thing is perfect or what would be the pitfalls of that, but I think it would be significantly better than encouraging people to go out and vote. And so with the two Democratic nominees, or the two Democratic candidates, you saw like a really polarized approach.
Yeah.
So it was like Bernie was encouraging people to stay home and was kind of like downplaying the whole thing, and then Biden came out on Twitter and said, told people to, if you don't have symptoms, go vote. Which
is pretty interesting based on the demographic of both of their voters. That I would think Biden's group is probably the most
susceptible.
risk,
like hey, my entire base consists half my base consists of boomers. Let me send them out into the no man's land to go vote. But yeah, really, really nuts, man. But I just can't I can't advocate for people going to vote just the same way as you can't advocate for people going to sporting events or concerts or anything else. And
right.
I mean, obviously you'd argue that voting is more important, but so is staying alive. So
any other thoughts on
the corona and the voting?
Yeah.
First of all, I think whether it was mail-in and I always try to think of an alternative, like how is there something that we're not thinking of? We're always with politics. It's either one or two choices. That's not true. There's the phrase, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I don't know why you want to skin cats. That's weird. But there has to be an alternative to just this or
That's what Trump voters do, right? They skin cats.
I wouldn't doubt it. I'm not a huge Trump fan, as y'all think I am, but I just don't like the alternative. So I believe if there was a way you could use your voter ID, like have an ID, anything that says where you live, and then if you have that, then you could vote electronically somehow, whether from your home or a website you logged into that you could prove it's you somehow. Is this acceptable to fraud? Of course. I mean, all systems are. But the vote-in has had many problems with fraud in the past as well. And I think even in Texas for Biden, this screwed.
We have problems with fraud even when people are showing up to vote.
Yep.
So
No, I agree. But I think it was in Texas. There was 8 counties where Biden won, where he basically shouldn't have won. They're like, there's no way he should have won. And it was all on Diebold machines.
Yeah, no,
it was such crap.
The UN guidelines for election fraud kind of say that if the discrepancy between the exit poll voting and the final results is over 3%, that it indicates voter fraud, and that
there should be an investigation.
They encourage international monitors. So it's like, if it had happened in any other country, we've overthrown governments without getting too deep. Everybody, we've overthrown governments
from the guy wearing the mask.
We give a shit. We give a shit a whole lot more if it happens in another country. Yes. But if it happens in a Democratic primary, then it's like, oh well, it's okay.
Y'all know, I don't like. I'm not a Bernie guy, right? I've already said it. You know it.
Really,
but I think he again got screwed by the DNC, and it shouldn't have been Biden. And I honestly think this is the other thing. I think Bernie would have had a better chance against Trump than Biden will. I think Biden has almost 0% chance.
So that will be the next topic. We're trying to stay one topic at a time. We might just jump into Bernie and forgetting COVID
and failing.
Yeah, but Sean, just wanted to get your thoughts on the general COVID and what your thoughts on if you have the voter fraud and all that.
Yeah, there's no question that our elections and whether they've been free and fair over the last couple of years is there's no question about Russian interference in our elections at all.
Can I say one thing on that?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of self-deportation right now. And this is on the liberal side of things too. They can't say the illegal vote stole a bunch because a lot of legal votes have left. So when they said about California, so many illegals voted, blah, 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 that argument for the conservative side of people ain't going to fly this time around and say, oh, well, Biden got a bunch of illegal votes. A ton left during this.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No, you're good. Great point. The mail-in votes, that's never been done on a national level. That doesn't mean that it can't work. And that's kind of where I stand on it is if we're already kind of questioning whether we had an actual free and fair election in 2016, why not in the midst of a pandemic, why not allow people to do a mail-in ballot? Well, we all know why one certain side doesn't want to see it happen with the high voter turnout. But that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think there's going to be a perfect answer. Like Johnny said, I don't think you should limit yourself to one way or the other. But if we did, I would like to see a mail-in vote.
Well, I think it's statistics. You don't have to be political on that the less voters, the more that favors Republicans on that. So, but I also would say on the other side of that, the people that are most at risk are going to be Republican voters most likely. So that's something that's to be said on both sides. I think the simplest thing is you can't tell everyone to stay home and then tell everyone to go out and vote. I mean, we can go into the weeds on that. I think the simplest.
This is a serious.
This is Occam's razor.
This
it's just like the simplest statement's the easiest statement on this one. That it's hard to be able to tell everybody stay home. Don't go anywhere but the grocery store. But hey, all of you go out and vote. And then on that, I as a voter over the past years, I've never met one of the people working at the voter things that is under 60. I personally, I don't know if that's maybe like coincidence, but I think the people that run those that have experience doing that tend to be in the older retired generation as well. So I think you run into a couple problems with that. And I really don't think that's political. I mean, you can be political based on who you think benefits from that, but that's not a political decision. That should be based on what's best for the people.
Right. And that's to be honest, you can't have both. You can't issue a statement and say, man, the Trump administration really isn't approaching this seriously enough. And then, well, because Wisconsin's voting this week, come out and vote for me.
Yeah.
You can't do both.
Yeah. That's a hard thing. We'll keep up with the COVID discussion. I'm sure COVID will leak into, but as we've already seen that there's been a lot of passion around the Bernie Sanders thing, especially in this in the group chat. So we'll kind of just keep going on the round table. JB,
Wait, is that it for Corona?
Well, if we have more stuff, I wanted to get into the thing that we all keep talking about, even if we're talking about other topics.
Huge number on that just happened for Corona. It passed up
H1N1.
it passed it up. I think yesterday, which to me was a milestone. I'm kind of I don't think it's what they're really saying it is for sure. So I'm the conspiracy guy on this one, but
the anti-science guy.
A while ago I was like, I don't know if this is going to pass it up, right? And then I'm like, okay, that's a pretty big number to hit a milestone. And I didn't hear much about it on like TV or anything. It was like I'm like, that's a big deal. We passed up the thing that they were comparing it to.
I mean, it's tough to say because it's been at the forefront for all of 3 months compared to what the others were. But I don't know if those others were as contagious and as I don't know if I don't know if there was a group that was more susceptible to it than.
No, it killed younger people.
Yeah,
they shut down. I think they shut down hockey maybe.
Yeah.
And schools were having I was just out of teaching, but schools were having some
shortages.
It's just tough to compare because I mean, like we talked about last week, I don't know. I can't remember another time, at least in our lifetimes, where American citizens have been subject to news reports where over 1,000 of their countrymen died in a single day to one cause, that being like a pandemic.
Yeah.
So not automobile accidents, not things that you can choose, but
the Surgeon General said. 9/11 in Pearl Harbor
times 3. Yeah, times 3.
Yeah.
And lastly, I would say that 9/11 awful tragedy. The immediate aftermath of that is that we spend over $1 trillion.
Yeah.
With you name it, as far as wars, foreign policy, intelligence.
19 years and still going.
Yeah. So you spend $1 trillion in response to that, and so we've had 3 times the deaths within a matter of months. Do you really think that the government is going to spend $1 trillion in the response to this?
Well,
I think the answer is probably no, but that's me.
There's a problem. Something else came out. So if you look at the total deaths in America last year during the last month, there's been a decrease of 15% from the total amount of people that have died in America. That's because of multitude of things. Car wrecks, not as much, but a 15% drop in total deaths. So we're at the worst pandemic ever that's compared to these things. But at the same time, somehow
staying home.
Staying home is saving lives.
The Dolphins in Venice would vouch for that.
They're like, this is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's a little bit of an outlier stat that like if everyone stops
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 doing everything.
Yeah, if everyone, it's just like saying, oh, maritime, accidents
The-
have dropped 40% whenever people started flying.
the
like,
oc-
yeah,
the-
that's a
The
that's a pretty
oxygen,
simple-
the oxygen in China says thank you.
I saw a suggestion that like mass shootings are like,
Of
there's no
course, yeah.
mass gatherings.
Yeah,
of
this
course,
is-
mass shootings are down.
But going off
Gun
of
sales are up though.
200%.
talking about all the war and money being spent on 9/11, I think that's a great parlay onto our next conversation on one of the few politicians that had the foresight of being against that war, and we can finally work our way into
Ron
Bernie
Paul?
Sanders conversation.
Ron Paul?
But
Hey,
hey,
I mean,
get out of
Ron
here,
Paul
John.
was against that war.
Get
too,
out of
by
here,
the way.
Johnny.
Who voted-
We're talking about major politicians.
Who voted against it?
We're talking about major politicians, Johnny.
But let's start I think this is going to be mingled in, but just Sean, I'm going to start with you this time a little bit. Just what are some of your thoughts on Bernie Sanders' campaign and your thoughts when you heard that he was dropping out today?
Well, I will say, huge supporter of Bernie in 2016 and 2020. But I will say that I didn't see a path to him winning the general election. That he was definitely my dog in the fight for the primary. And I'd like to have seen him go against Trump. But just in the sake of venting, I think a lot of this, in my opinion, just goes down to Elizabeth Warren, man. Like once in a race for who could be the most progressive candidate. We're going to give free. I'm going to one up her and give free. Was once in a race to be the most progressive candidate and refuses after Super Tuesday, after a poor performance. Super Tuesday, she refuses to give an official endorsement to Bernie Sanders. I think that hurt him in the long run.
And then tries to go on Twitter today and say you're a hero and you did so much for the progressive movement. Yeah.
I think what did she finish in her home state? Did she finish third in Massachusetts? I just want to be sure. I'm pretty sure
Third, exactly. Yeah.
she finished third. But
There weren't enough Indian reservations in the state.
really, that was really upsetting to see, especially after she was one of the first people to attack Bloomberg jumping in the race as a billionaire. One of the
That's
first to
right.
jump on that.
That's right.
And days before Super Tuesday, accepts the endorsement and the contributions from a mysterious billionaire donator. We're talking multi-million-dollar donations. That was upsetting to say the least.
I actually have a path for him to have won, and it's it's towing off what you said.
Shit.
So Bernie should have said, okay, the right thinks I'm too radical or whatever, right? Conservatives. He should have said, I'm going to get Mike Bloomberg as my VP. He's going to fund this. I'm going to get tons of money. He's going to be the business side of my.
You know damn
liberal
well
thing.
that would never happen though. John.
Well, it's the same that Hillary could have won if she would have bought Bernie on as her VP.
right.
So I think that year he would have had unlimited money. He would have had the young vote. He would have had the moderates. Even my parents kind of like Bloomberg. Bernie was raising good money, but we're talking a $3 billion war chest to go against Trump. And you can say, Bernie's going to say, look, I'm going to try to get healthcare passed. Bloomberg is going to be my business guy advising me how to do it without bankrupting the country. And I think that message could have maybe had a decent chance. Better than anything else on that side of things. As soon as you said Bloomberg, I kind of thought about that a while ago.
I mean,
I know.
I hear what you're saying. It's just it's the exact type of person that Bernie is preaching against. Yeah, to be honest with you, man, when I woke up this morning and saw the news, like I mean, it affected my whole day. Like it's going to affect my week and my month and whatever. But it's just without getting as amped up as I normally would. It's just I firmly believe that if you take away Cold War propaganda, if you take away mainstream media propaganda, most working class Americans are looking at Bernie and saying, this guy, even if I don't agree with him on everything, this is the one person in the race that actually gives a shit about me and actually gives a shit about working people. And whether, like I said, with the exit poll discrepancies and with people with the second and third place candidates dropping 2 days before Super Tuesday and endorsing the fifth place guy immediately endorsing him because because Obama made a call. And then what Sean said is absolutely spot on. Like, Elizabeth Warren at that moment, you're not viable at all. You're not going to be viable. You claim to be progressive. You don't drop out. And when you do drop out, you withhold endorsement. And so it's like the one chance that Bernie would have had is if she consolidated the progressive vote and still maybe it wouldn't have been enough, because in this country, most people, when they hear democratic socialism,
Yep.
there's just the level of education and the level of is not high enough. The level of ignorance in this country is too high, and people automatically equate democratic socialism, which I'll have you know, I've lived in 5 different countries over the last 8 years that are all democratic socialist societies. They automatically equate that to Marxism or to dictatorships like Venezuela or China, and it's just like it's not the same. It's not the same thing at all. If you look at the root word of socialism, the root word is social, that meaning people. And so I feel like if the electorate was a little bit more informed, or gave a shit a little bit more, you could at least look at Bernie and say, this guy, he's not radical in any country other than our own. And if I don't agree with everything he says, at least I know that he's out for the majority and not for the 1%. And so the way I'm feeling at the moment is that now, as a country, we deserve whatever we get. So for people that supported Bernie, maybe you should have done a little bit more or whatever. But it's like we deserve whatever we get now, because you've basically got 2 Republicans running against each other. One of them just happens to say mean things sometimes.
One is a career politician of epic scales. And I think we're getting screwed a little bit too. Out of all the people on the left on that side, I think Bernie would have been the one that would have been best in debates against Trump. I think he would have killed everybody else. Well, he's going to kill Biden in debates. It's going to be embarrassing. Bernie is an old school career. He's kind of a career politician too. I mean, it's not a lie. And he's been through these battles. He's been through debates. He would have been able to get Trump in some "I got you"
Let's
moments.
hold up on that. I want to stay on what JB said, and I want to ask you a question as a supporter, because this is my biggest critique of Bernie, and I'm not in as far as you two. I voted for him. I think he's a great candidate. My biggest thing with him was that he had to label himself as a democratic socialist, because I think if he just labeled himself as a progressive Democrat, he's the president of our country. He's not running last year. I mean, last election cycle, he kills Hillary. I think a little bit of the stubbornness, because so many people, and yes, you can blame the American people, but the American people have always been an uneducated voter. And he is intelligent enough that I think he makes a simple change. If we go back 8-10 years and farther than that, his voting record is amazing. Yeah. Like, he's one of the few guys, you go through these debates, and it's so like everyone else is having to apologize for their voting record, and he's going back to it to defend it. Like, look, I've been doing this since this time. So my question to you guys is, what impact do you think that word? Because as soon as you hear democratic socialism, it gives people on the right, it gives people in the center say, oh, communism. Like that's
the thing. If I'm being honest, and like I said, I ride for the guy. Like, I donated to the campaign. I really ride for the guy. But if I had to offer a criticism, it would be exactly that. Like, know where you're at. And in Europe, it flies because people. I mean, I would argue there's a bit more common sense going on, but it's just, you cannot label yourself that in America at the moment and win. And that's also why I admired him, though, is it's like you're taking a term, you're taking a term that's been demonized for 60 years, and you're actually gaining popularity with it. But in the end, apparently it's not enough to ascend to the presidency. But you're talking about a guy that, on MLK Day, every single politician on both sides panders and says, oh, well, the ideals of Martin Luther King. Well, I know a guy that was running for president until today that was arrested 3 times advocating for civil rights. I know a guy that's been on the right side of history when it comes to the moral issues pretty much every single time. And I know a guy that's opposed endless wars and all that stuff. And it's just like, if that's not good enough, I don't know what to say. But I do agree with you. If you label yourself a little bit differently, or if the campaign labels themselves as just, hey, we're Democrats, but we're Democrat heavy, we're not Democrat light.
Right.
That changes everything. But just acknowledging democratic socialism, which to me is there's no problem, but I acknowledge that in this country you can't you apparently you can't run that way, and there's no
Yeah,
chance of you
well,
winning that way.
Let me just add to that real quickly here. I think as the DNC doubles down and they search for a candidate to continue Obama's legacy, right? Because we're seeing the same exact playbook from 2016.
Sure.
Right after Hillary, who's the closest to continue? It's Biden, right? And we've seen that playbook, and that's exactly why it's going to fail. There is nothing that is going to capture the excitement of the left. Like Biden is the exact opposite of that. There's
John Kerry 2.0.
So, but I think when going back to Bernie, I think to me that was the appeal. The appeal was where Elizabeth Warren hesitated to say, yes, I am going to raise your taxes for Medicare for all. Bernie had no shame about it, and that's him being genuine. I think the average American voter almost needs we almost need these debates to include like an anchor chart to show them a visual. Like, yes, here is your budget, the average American's budget, where you see your taxes being raised. You're going to get the payback when you're not paying in these premiums to these private insurance companies
every month.
But people don't understand that. They hear, oh, my taxes are going to be raised, and they fear the word socialism. I think Bernie did a good job of kind of changing that word. I think for the wins coming out of this, I don't think there's a bunch, but for the wins coming out of this, hopefully we're not as afraid of that term.
The movement will survive even if Bernie's candidacy doesn't. I agree.
I'm surprised it has not split the Democratic Party. They kind of know
has.
that.
I
know, but I mean, like
after this year, it will.
Yeah.
Trust me.
And the people on the health insurance thing with this stuff happening, people that have lost their jobs and lost their insurance, when they go to pay COBRA, which if you don't know what COBRA is, it's kind of like the insurance that you get.
For unemployed.
Holy crap, it's insanely expensive. And when they start seeing what it really costs, you might have some people with what the point you make. And I'm saying this as I disagree with a lot of what you say, but it could be a thing that would help that side of things and go,
it's
holy crap.
Poetic justice right there.
Yeah.
Here's one last thing before we transition, man. Not likely at all, but imagine for a second if the Trump administration, Trump campaign, because of the pandemic, imagine if they embraced the idea of single payer. Imagine that. Like, so they keep the racist shit. They keep everything. Imagine they keep everything else that they have, except they just say, hey, we're gonna one up what the Dems are being pushed to do, but they won't do. And we'll just say, hey, single payer, we'll support it. We'll change the system, or at least the public option. Anything better than what the Dems are talking about, they win in a landslide. Imagine if Trump just rolls that out, and he's unpredictable enough to do it. But imagine if he did that.
The thing is, Bernie, it's weird for being a career politician. I give him credit in not playing those stupid games, but it's one of those things where, I mean,
cuts both ways though, man. Just play the game just a little bit, and I think he's the guy. I mean, I think my only other point, and I think you guys all cover different sides as well. I think it can't be understated how important Trump played into all of this. I think if he was at the end of his term and people weren't so worried about making a mistake I think the fear that people had of trying something new when Donald Trump was being reelected, I think that played fear and this word that no one can really define, I think will be like the key word of this election is this electability argument. Like you hear that every podcast is like, oh, who's the most electable? Who has the best chance to get Donald Trump? Not who has the best policies,
right?
Not who exactly.
Who's right?
That never played into any conversation. It was always that electability.
Hey, when it comes to electability, watch, man. And if I'm wrong, I invite people to put comments on the link to this podcast. Please just grill me. But now that Biden is going to be the nominee,
grill him either way.
Trump, yeah, please do. I thrive off that shit. But Biden as the nominee is going to make this summer, no matter COVID or not. Trump, when it gets competitive, Trump is just going to say dementia Joe or something like that. Like he's going to say something about the mental well-being of Joe Biden, which in my opinion is might be valid, but he's going to say something like dementia Joe, something really simple, something
creepy Joe. Call him creepy Joe.
Yeah, you could both work, but it's like he's going to come up with something really crude and simple, and because of where we're at, it's going to work. And it's just
I'm just waiting for Trump to just come out and say, I am a white enthusiast. When he says that,
He's basically said it before.
Johnny,
let's-
Johnny, if you don't think that that's the case, you've been living under a rock.
he's dog whistling.
Let's
right now. just say it, Trump. Just say it.
JB was talking about ways that the Republican Party can mix it up, and we let's move that along to how the NBA has been mixing things up a little bit. We've had a 2K tournament thrown in there. Got to watch KD play a little bit. He got beat by somebody, and then my favorite thing was that they are trying to work on a horse competition. And my question to you guys is who would be a couple of your like all time horse players? I knew my guy was Steph that I wanted to throw out there, but we had a couple
No
different guys
dunking.
from different eras.
No dunking, right? You
Nah,
can't. No
nah,
dunking.
nah,
That's
no,
what I always call when I'm
yeah.
playing with my brother in the backyard
Yeah,
because
no
that's
dunking.
Austin would
No,
just
no,
say
yeah,
each
no,
time
no,
I
no,
away, so.
no dunking, I guess.
Yeah, unless you.
Who do you have, Johnny?
I think y'all don't know about this, but I'm pretty sure that Pistol Pete was actually somewhat famous for his horse ability.
we
No,
actually-
no,
there's some
they
clips.
had
There's clips of
I've
him.
seen an old clip of
Okay.
him playing against Gervin, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
a couple
It's on
different
YouTube
guys.
still. If you want to
Yeah.
go watch it, it's pretty
So-
cool.
I'm going Nash.
I like Nash.
Yeah, I'm going Nash on that because he's going to do some soccer shit and also a great
Smart,
shooter.
and
yeah,
no one else can do that stuff there.
Yeah, no other NBA player is going to be as good at soccer as Steve Nash is. So
Smart.
I'll go Nash.
What if we call no dunking, no kicking though?
Oh shit!
No,
Well,
kicking is. Come
I'm
on.
joking. It's a trick. It's a
Yeah,
trick shot.
yeah.
we
come
getting
on.
serious about horses
Who,
burning.
who do you have, Dustin?
I
Yeah,
Steph,
he said
Steph's my guy,
Curry.
man. I'm gonna throw it over to Sean. Sean's gonna do a guy who
Steph.
doesn't pass, probably like Steph.
Yeah. Well,
Another point guard.
if Steph was already picked, then I guess
he
I'd
has
have to
been.
go. Well, I guess I would have to
Just-
go. Maybe Trey Young. I think Trey
Ah,
Young.
that's
Ooh, that's a
I
wild
think
card.
he'll be solid.
do
He's
like
he's
that.
just going to shoot from the jump circle and
Yeah.
win.
and you don't need him to play defense, so that's good.
Well, in that case, I got Dirk then. No defense. I got
you
Dirk.
mother.
There's
If he calls a 1 footer on every shot,
There's a
that'd be-
guy also that maybe could win just because of a specialty thing is Rick Barry. He could go free throw line, underline free throws, 92%.
That would be a good one.
Who literally? What guy is going to make that? Maybe Pistol Pete could have been hit, but who's going to make him? He could just go to the free throw line all day. Granny shots. Who's going to hit that? How many?
I mean,
out of 10, how many granny shots are you going to hit if you shoot 10? One.
maybe.
I think once those NBA players like shot the first or second one, I think those guys could pick it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't know if they'd shoot it as well.
also,
but-
if you choose just the lowest percentage shot there is, if it's that being like a deep three,
Yeah.
like you got to give somebody like Kyle Korver a chance to win just because he's going to shoot a fucking higher percentage than everyone.
Hey, what about this? You only can do the shot one time. You got one granny shot. You got one
Well,
spot.
those
from
aren't
there.
the rules, Johnny.
That would be it. Would be cheating for Rick Barry, man. It went
Shit.
too easy.
You can't
What-
do the same shot
Who do
over
they have?
again the
Right,
second time.
I think they've
that is horse rules.
they've-
Is that?
Yeah,
not-
like
not
you
in a
can
row.
right. You can't like if I do an underhand shot from the free throw, I have to then my next shot at the very least
Not
do a
that.
different shot. Then I can
Okay.
go back to the underhand. So
All right.
So right now, I think they're talking about Zach LaVine, Trey Young,
Yep,
and
one more.
And who's the other guy? Are we
Uh,
just misinformed right now?
no, you've got your 2 for 2. You're
Yeah.
2 for out of 3. I'm trying to look it up. I think I sent it to you guys.
So those are the top two.
Chris
that are
Paul.
playing
Chris
right
Paul.
now.
It's Chris Paul, Zach LaVine, and Trey Young.
No Curry.
No,
No.
I mean
Wow.
Curry's
I think the
chilling,
best
man.
guys have nothing to.
Curry's
Yeah,
chilling,
he's
man.
hanging out with his
it's
kids.
golfing. Probably his golf.
Curry's
pass
still getting.
somehow.
Is he still getting paid? The other guys aren't. Right?
Yeah,
And no, I honestly,
Under Armour's taking care of
I
it.
honestly with how naive is it for people that are saying they think the NBA is going to come back this year? And it's like, man, first of all, it's not. Second of all, if you even narrowed it down to like a tournament or something like that, or a shortened playoff thing, you've got to make sure that everybody there is tested for COVID. It's almost like you have to prepare dorms in the arena for the guys.
You
and
know-
it's like,
you know
hey,
what they
you're
were
all-
talking
all
about?
playing here.
is to make it easier is to just go to practice facilities to make it less people, make it more towards less like they have cameras can be closer. They can have some of those. There's already cameras at those practice facilities, so you don't even have to have cameramen. It wouldn't be as good of they were
Yeah.
talking about ways to get around that have less people at
We-
practice facilities and like smaller universities.
We
Were
talked
two things that
we,
have been mentioned.
we talked a bit earlier, like I think it's honestly a scramble between major sports organizations, major sports associations to see who can be first.
Yeah,
to
and
get-
whoever's first is gonna,
honestly to
gonna
be
be great.
first to get something on TV. So
Yeah.
it's not like you're competing against the other people of the same sport. you're competing against everyone to see
Sports.
you're competing to see who can get something competitive on TV that other people can either watch and or buy.
Yeah.
And at the moment, UFC is trying to buy an island. So
I love
that's
it.
where we're
I love
at.
the
I
idea.
don't know if y'all have seen it, but I have an HTC Vive. And if you've got the NBA League Pass, I think the year before they had about 10 games. They set up a robot camera in there. It looks like you're on the front row. There were commercials about it. I haven't heard much of it in a while, but I would pay $10 to go to one of
Yes.
these things, and I can look around. It's like on a little like robotic thing that looks around. Set 1,000 of those in there if you have the
Well, why not
ability to
just
do
set
it.
one and let it live stream, and you just
Yeah, that would be
you
a
know what
good
I'm saying?
idea.
Like everyone just watches the same.
Have a
thing. I think that-
commentator
yeah.
watching it.
Yeah, I
whatever.
think that's something that's doable. But let's go on to our game of the week and talk a little bit about the teams and get a little build up. This is the Western Conference Finals, Game 7. The Seattle SuperSonics. The Sonics were 55-27 this year. They finished second in the NBA Pacific, coached by George Karl. Their leading scorer that year was Ricky Pierce. Sean Kemp, Eddie Johnson, Gary Payton were their top guys, and then they went up against the 92-93 Phoenix Suns. They were 62-20, finished first in the NBA Pacific Division. Their coach is Paul Westphal. They were led by the main person that we're talking about in this podcast, Charles Barkley.
Sir Charles Barkley.
Kevin Johnson. KJ was he popped in mine, and they had an old school for Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge was their sixth man. So just first thoughts watching the game. We all watched it within the past couple of days. It was a little less pretty than the Spurs Mavs game that we saw last. I think it's fair to say. But what were some of your guys' first thoughts from the game?
Johnny, you want to go first, man? 'Cause
Yeah, it kind of stinks. I feel like I'm the kid that got homework and didn't get all the way through the game, but
Oh,
I also
no.
was watching him like, all right.
You already had an F.
I remember-
God
yeah.
damn it, John.
I remembered some of this, but some of the guys that kind of stood out was Eddie Johnson. I don't know how old was he? Do you know off the top of your head? there?
Old.
I think he was
He
like
was-
28. Yeah, he had 19 in the third quarter.
He was a guy I looked at him. I was like, is this guy just an old looking rookie or a really old guy that just has looked the same forever? I couldn't tell how old he was, but then I was surprised. Like, he's good. And he was the guy that had a really good looking shot. And I'm watching that game and all these ugly shots, like just ugly. And I don't know if it was the era, but like Charles Barkley shots, ugly.
It was.
You know, and then I'm watching Eddie and I'm like, that dude, if one of the guys that I'm like, that guy could have nowadays, you put him on as the third or fourth guy on one of these teams, he's hitting Klay Thompson 8-9 threes in a game, had seven.
Whoa. No, he's
Yeah.
not. He's viewers. He is not Klay Thompson.
How many?
Go
Go
on.
look at how many.
Go on.
No,
Damn it, Johnny.
Look, he had 17
That is
points.
a top 2 shooter in the history
Yeah.
of basketball.
Oh, Eddie Johnson is way
Eddie
up there
Johnson's not one.
as an all-time shooter.
Johnny, you better stop this
Move,
shit now.
move. I'm saying for that era and how few they shot.
get the stats.
You put him on a team now with all these 3-point shots going up. That
And we
guy
thought
is-
his craziest take was about Bernie.
I guarantee this. If he plays now, he would have had multiple games with 10 threes in a game. With as many as they're throwing up now. The dude was a dead-eye all-time shooter. If you look at his stats.
All right.
let me hold on. Let me.
Get,
I think
Sean,
this is
Sean,
great.
get in here.
This is a great segue because when I was watching this game, for the first time ever, I started to ask myself, who did Jordan really play in the finals? Because
Now we're talking.
this was some ugly basketball, guys. Okay,
Chris Dial is somewhere.
this
pissed.
is some ugly basketball. Let me tell you what all the gore and the violence and the physicality that I've been missing out on UFC during this COVID-19. All of that was made up for in this one game of playoff basketball in '93. I thought the skill was underwhelming, the offensive and defensive schemes. I think Justin, I watched it with Justin. He put it best. I couldn't say it better, but it almost looked like we were watching a rough draft of basketball. It was terrible. Now we'll get into Barkley in a little bit, and I'll save some thoughts on Barkley because Barkley is the exception. But outside of that, I was really just unsure of what I was watching, other than some guys just tackling one another and just being overly aggressive.
Just a quick
This is
sidebar. Just a quick sidebar on the Eddie Johnson shooting things. Just in case y'all are wondering if the over/under for Eddie Johnson's 3-point percentage was over under 10% his rookie year, it was under. So just for if we're playing, eventually we might venture into trivia. So that's just like a little thing thing, I'll give you the answer on that. So yeah, so Eddie Johnson and Klay Thompson statistically are very, very,
What was
very,
career?
very, very
What
comparable.
was his?
Career was 32%. So yeah, he's basically Klay
He's a
Thompson.
hard worker.
He's basically
He's a hard
Klay
worker.
Thompson.
How much?
Klay
is-
Thompson's being denied from 40 feet, and Eddie Johnson gets walk up open threes. But you're right. I think they're basically like it's
I'm saying time.
One and the same.
Not
they're the
not as
that's
good.
the note I
didn't
put
say he
too.
is. I'm
I
saying
put
he could have
Klay
been.
Thompson.
All
Could
right.
pause
have
not.
been.
So check it out, man. Sean, like Sean said, man, we watched this together, and you're talking about like the
We all
elite-
6 feet apart.
Yeah, we were
Okay, good,
social distancing. You're talking about an elite game, so essentially a Final Four matchup of the best league in the world, and at that time, I mean, for sure, the best league in the world times 10, and these are the two teams that are going to go play Jordan in the finals, and my observations, there's obviously way less threes than there are now. Like that was almost a specialty back then. The guard plays way less dynamic. So it's like if you look at all the best guards in that game, like KJ was getting to the rack in transition, but not somebody that's going to go fill it up for 30 in the half court. Not Ainge. Gary Payton was a big, like if you weren't watching basketball in the 90s, like, so if we try to tell a kid today, like, hey, Gary Payton's the man, like, well, he's the fourth leading scorer on his team, and in that game he had under 10 points or so. And
Here's the question I want to ask you. That I mostly agree with that. I think KJ was pretty dynamic. The thing that I kept wondering is like, these coaches were stealing paychecks. I mean, the spacing, they're like, okay, all right, we got a lightning quick point guard. Barkley is a streaky mid-range shooter. Let's plop a guy right in the middle of the paint. So if either of them get there, they're running into their own teammate.
Well,
this guy's not going to be a great layup guy. If he's open, he can dunk it. Like, let's not provide space. Like, I think that's so hard to rank I thought just the coaching, the actions they run is like, I did a chart at one point. I did a chart at one point and I got tired of it and I got to like 12. Like the amount of plays they had to where it's like, all right, make sure nobody's moving, throw it to the mid post, not deep in the post, not like set a cross screen. We're just going to throw it to the mid post. We're not going to get a switch. We're going to get probably their best defender on our post guy. He's going to take one dribble and shoot it over his right shoulder fadeaway.
Yeah.
And then we
It's
just
a lot
hope Barkley rebounds
and
it.
he got hacked 5 times before he got that shot.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
No,
No,
but
but-
murdered
but-
to get to that spot.
And another thing that we saw is like, okay, teams obviously tried to play through the post a lot more back
Yes.
then, and it's like both teams, I guess, like George Karl and Westphal both committed to doubling in the post every time.
I have something
even,
about Carl later. in this.
even outside the post, and it's like they're double teaming guys that aren't one-on-one threats in the post. They're double teaming everything from Barkley to Thompson. Like, it doesn't matter. And part of that is like, wow, this is really stupid. And then the other part of that is, well, even if they make the perfect pass out, most of the guys that catch it are not shooting that three.
No.
And really, it was crazy. And then my other main takeaway was just that white guys in the league have come a long way. They used to look really, really nerdy. Like, I mean, Ainge looked like he belonged in a math class at MIT in the 90s. And then, Thompson, I can't even, I don't know where to start, but we've come a long way as far as fashion and hairstyles.
The positive for me outside of Barkley, and we'll talk about Barkley later, I think all four of us, Barkley was incredible, but I really liked KJ. And I think if you threw KJ was so quick. I mean, we talk about
transition to modern ball.
but we also, you talk about like how many times they had to trap him in the half court. Like they were throwing traps at him 40 feet out a lot of
But
times.
why?
Like,
Did they though?
Why
Did they
though?
have
Yeah.
to?
they didn't have to. No.
Why?
Agreed. I think that they doubled through 2 quarters. They doubled KJ more than doubled Barkley. I thought Karl was absolutely putrid that game. Like they were so worried about KJ in transition. He got to the rim and did some good things. In the half court, KJ would break a guy down and shoot a mid-range jump shot, and he had almost as many shots that had barely grazed rim or airball than he made. But they were so worried about him. But I thought KJ did some really good things. He reminded me a little bit of like, I thought he could have been a poor man's Tony Parker if he had true spacing. And like people had a tough time staying in front of him. That mid-range jumper, he hit 4 or 5. He got to the rim and dished the ball a couple times. He made a couple of incredibly stupid passes, but there were some flashes from him where I was extremely impressed. And then I was going to show some love to Eddie Johnson, but now that he's been compared to Klay, I'm going to just go ahead and skip my Eddie Johnson comments.
Not compared. Did not say as good. I said in this
I think
era,
you said he would be Clay.
in this era, I said he could have been like. I
Y'all
think he
go
would have
back
got
and-
a lot more threes up.
You know
Um,
how JB gave himself the opportunity for y'all to go back and hit him up with stuff if
Yeah,
if-
give me.
yeah, get Johnny when you
Quote me
line up.
correctly. But I have one thing. When you're talking about the spacing and all these things, and I was thinking about it, the problem was it failed in the NBA. So the Denver Nuggets back in the day tried it, and I don't know if it's failed because just no one else was doing it and you didn't match up. But then you look, the team that did make it succeed was kind of the Lakers. You know, that run, they did run and gun, they had spacing, but they had a lot of talent to do it.
Right.
The difference is now, I think, is that these coaches now are taking the talented teams and they're doing that. So could have some of those, the Lakers did it, right? The Lakers and Celtics, some of those games were 130. I mean, they were ridiculously high scoring, and that was the 80s. And then you come to this era of pre-brawl, like not, you know, you're still fouling the crap out of each other, you know?
But that's what you get though. Like every time you talk to, you know, somebody that's got the old school bias, it's just like if they talk about scoring and pace, it's like, well, people actually played defense back then, and it's like, well, not
when you could
Debatable.
hold,
Yeah.
not exactly, and
Yeah.
like everything from rotations to tactics and stuff like that has come a long way. And so where I'm coming from is just the same way as we're watching a game in the early 90s and saying, wow, like this is really different from what we see now. It's the same way that people in the 90s would look at basketball played in the 60s and 70s
Right.
and say, wow,
Yeah.
this is nowhere close to what we're doing. Like if you're really a proponent of the game and you're really a basketball person, how would you feel if the game wasn't getting better?
Right.
So
That'd
it's
be a
no
scary
guys,
thought.
so-
real quick on Kevin Johnson, as y'all were saying, why
KJ?
double him? KJ, 20 points, 12 assists,
Yeah, he had a good game.
22, 11, 19 and 10 that the year before that. That dude was a dude. Like
I
you're
really
getting-
liked
he
him. He
was,
was my favorite.
He
was
and
my-
Marley were both all stars before.
No,
No,
Marley
Yeah.
got
we
there.
that's the guy I shouted out. I just
Yeah.
don't think you need to double him from 40 feet away when Charles Barkley's the
No,
next
I mean
best.
Sean and I
couldn't
were
shoot the three.
Sean and I were watching it and we're like, are they pressing right now? Are they trapping at half court? Is this an AAU game against a bad team? Like what the fuck is going on? And they actually got buckets off that. Like it wasn't close enough at the end for this game 7 that we're talking about. The link will be posted, by the way.
Hey, for your
But it wasn't
Go.
close enough. But it's like they're trapping these guys at the end of half and quarter situations, and KJ's too fast. And like, obviously, it's an NBA team, so they break the pressure and score. And it's just like, how is that in today's league or even in today's college basketball? Like that's not even an option. Like you don't even think about doing that.
I think these are interesting topics. I'm sure most people watching this game would not go through, but I don't want to bury the lead here. That I think we would regret not
wait, I
digging
want-
into this too deep before we
You're-
talk about Charles Barkley.
Yeah,
that
wait, your Tony Parker real quick. KJ, towards the end when he probably slowed down, 2 seasons he shot 36% from 3, then 44. Almost
I
exactly
think
what
I
happened
think
with
he could've
Parker.
been-
When he got slow, starts nailing threes. What if he could have done that earlier? He would have been like.
I think he could have been a poor man's. That's why I made the comparison.
Yeah, I'm giving him the stats.
But I think, like I said, we sat on the patio out there and talked, and the glowing praise was for one man, Charles Barkley. I mean, did things. His rebound capacity, his footwork and size, the physicality he played with, his ability to backside offensive board. I think we were all just impressed by his abilities, and so I want to start with him and then finish this conversation with how we would rank him and what we think about the general power forward pyramid as far as who's the best and how we stack rank that. So what are you guys' general thoughts on Barkley, that game, and Barkley's career?
Well, I'll just, the game in general I described as underwhelming, but what wasn't was Barkley. Barkley clearly stood out. I can't remember I know he was 40 and 20 on that game plus
44 and 22.
44 and
something like that. It's
22.
nuts.
And it was for him to do what he did in the paint during that era.
At
where-
6'4" and a half.
Yeah, where you could all but tackle the ball handler. For him to just command the paint the way he did it was amazing. And to me, it almost, I was thinking again, like, well, this is who they're going to send to Jordan. And I think, to me, Charles Barkley is like victim number 1 to Michael Jordan. I think he is the best player. We're gonna talk later about stack ranking, but to me, he is the best player to not win a championship because of Michael Jordan. You take Michael Jordan out, Charles Barkley is a champion for sure in my book.
Yep. And I think we kind of got kicked off with this because I said, well, what if you took one of these guys that kind of did like what Durant did? You go from you're an MVP candidate, and instead of going to a team where you try to be the man, what if Barkley had gone to Seattle? Would then he have the Jordan?
He did go to Houston though, didn't he? 90,
Yeah,
96.
they
Yeah,
almost
he's on his way out.
yeah, but this era Barkley 40 and 22 in games that the Bulls are barely winning some, and then you throw a Barkley in there. I mean, that he's kind of that guy, but doesn't have the championship, but maybe could have. What's his legacy? And when we talk about the rankings of who these, who's where, the championship, do you have the championship always comes up.
I think that's not the biggest topic, because what's fair is none of them did it. Everyone had to do it with the team that they were given. That no super teams are created outside of the fact that Michael Jordan was just a superior player and competitor. So I think that was apples to apples there, just like teams are creating super teams against each other now. I think I said one team did it, so there's a build up. So it's a team of it's 7-8 super teams, and then teams that are trying to get into the lottery. JB, what were some of your thoughts on what you saw with Barkley, and what were some of your favorite moments, or what were your thoughts on his career?
It's cool, man. Like just how we talked about last week when it came to Dirk and Duncan. It's nice to you hear about it, but in '93, like most of us outside of Johnny were 5 years old, right? So it's like.
Correct.
You don't get to see it live, and you can hear about it, read about it, see the stats, but then to actually watch it again, it's very cool to see like to see NBA royalty actually, like to show you why they're NBA royalty. And it's like Charles, that's a guy that I think when they call the starting lineups, they listed him at 6'6", and it's like that's generous because he's under 6'5", and that's a guy that is. We'll talk about it in a bit, but it's like that's a guy that's absolutely top 5 power forwards of all time, probably top 3, and did it undersized and just as a grinder. And I really appreciated everything about how he played. Like it's like he does the dirty stuff. He hit threes. He was back. Sean Kemp's didn't strike me as a super high basketball IQ guy. He came straight out of high school and all that, super athletic, but
JUCO.
He's using that against Sean Kemp because he hit him for 2 back cuts, hit him on a on
getting him off his feet.
getting him off his feet on fate, and calling out the fouls. And it's like just seeing yes he's a dog, yes he's just wants it that much more, yes he's that much more physical than everybody, but he's also a really smart basketball player and doing stuff that you wish your best player wish your best player would do. And that it was cool to see, and he dominated. I mean, that's a game where at that time Sean Kemp's stock is super high, like he's averaging 18 and 10 a game or whatever.
For that series he was over 20. He increased from his regular
season. So it's very much a showdown between him and Barkley, and it's like, is it any mystery the way that their NBA legacies went? And it's like it's the guy that was in foul trouble and kind of underperformed in Game 7.
Yep.
Compared to the guy who's the biggest legend that never won a championship.
Me not doing my homework, I focused more in the beginning. Barkley didn't do a lot at the start of that game. He almost looked nervous.
First quarter, he had 4 points, and the announcers are kind of going in on him and stuff. And
he looked nervous.
The last 3 quarters, just wrecked shit. And in the first quarter, I think he shot either an air ball or something off the side of the backboard.
Missed a free throw, I think, or something.
But it was weird. Was kind of eased into it. But second, third, and fourth quarters, I mean, that guy, I think you could stack him up against anybody.
The second half,
easily.
Second half, he affected almost every possession.
Yeah,
the play that went through him, he created a double team, he scored, or he'd get a deflection or an offensive rebound. Like you could clip together 10 and 12 possessions in a row where he's just a major factor in doing something small or big that affected winning. That was just his motor gets, we talked about this a little bit. I don't love this comparison in certain ways, but like the most comparable person is he had a Draymond Green like motor with a superstar level skill.
Well, it's like
And
if
that's
Draymond Green
Was just as good offensively.
Well, no, if Draymond Green could carry a team offensively,
Right.
that would be Charles
The
Barkley.
effort
And
stuff
how ironic that they hate each other and talk
True.
shit to each other
It's
now.
like-
But it's like
yeah.
obviously Chuck gets the nod there. But
Dude, there's one big thing y'all are missing on Barkley though. Barkley could have easily gone down potentially an Allen Iverson type career, but y'all are watching Barkley. I'm trying to think of a comparison. Y'all are watching Barkley. I will do anything to win a championship. I don't care about anything else. I will dive on the floor. I'll take a charge. Barkley, first 8 years was still a superstar, but he wasn't going to take a charge. He wasn't going to do the things. The motor was different, and he was an Iverson type partying guy out there doing stuff.
He wasn't taking a charge of the game either. There was not a lot of defense being played on his part.
Yeah, and so we're witnessing best Barkley, and it helped him to be on that dream team and see Jordan and see those guys practice and all that stuff.
well, no, but I mean Barkley. That we talked about it earlier. Like Barkley in '93 is probably the best player that Jordan ever saw in the finals because he's, the dream team is the they're the national team that gets the most clout out of everybody, and Barkley led them in scoring.
Yep.
So I think it was like 16 points a game or whatever. But it's like when you're playing with all the best players the world's ever seen, 16 is big. But he had come into that season with Phoenix, led the national team in scoring in Barcelona, wins a gold medal, and then best record in the NBA, averages 26 and 13. I mean there's nothing bad you can say about Barkley.
I saw the dream team play in Portland. My family's from Oregon, and we were in Oregon that summer, and I saw him play against Oscar Schmidt from Brazil, one of the best, one of the best foreigners no one knows about except for real basketball junkies.
Led FIBA in scoring, I think.
Yep.
One of
Maybe.
the little notes that I had was you could tell that the Bulls were going to beat them just the way that they celebrated just making the finals. Where you see those,
oh my God!
Barkley's crying.
Barkley had the towel over his head.
These guys are. Because the way they played, the intensity they played with there, you're like, okay, actually, if I was in this moment, I would think that maybe they could just fight with them. But then the way you saw them celebrate, like they won a championship, like without really saying it, they're like, oh, this was their season. They got there.
Honestly,
it was a super interesting moment to watch them kind of celebrate like they had won a championship already.
Well, and honestly, I got to ask an older dude on this, but do you think that the Bulls that the Suns met in the finals, like, other than Jordan, who is established as being that guy, like other than Jordan, is that Bulls team in '93 that much more talented than Phoenix? And that much deeper than Phoenix.
After you go past 3, probably not.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, Phoenix had nobody. You can't compare anybody on that Phoenix team to Scotty.
Yeah,
but after Jordan and Scotty,
better sixth man.
Phoenix has the better sixth man, the better bench, all that. And Sabalos got hurt, but it's just
Sabalos.
Yeah, they still had.
He was out. He was out in Game 7.
Still had 6 guys average double figures without Sabalos.
That's big.
Yeah.
So Sabalos didn't play in the finals.
They had 7 guys in double figures. So Sabalos got hurt, and they still had starting 5 plus.
Did he
plus
not
Danny
play?
Ainge.
He didn't play against the Bulls.
I don't think so.
Wow, that's a big. He's a great matchup for Scotty. I mean,
that's a testament. That's a testament to Jordan, though. Is that Phoenix probably had the better team outside of the top 2 players, but
I would. Talent-wise, once you start from there,
we'll definitely have to have an MJ Pius. I'd like to. I wanted to get to this because I think this is one of the more interesting of all the all-time power forward discussion.
Sure.
So we had talked about this a little bit off air, and so my list, and I'd like to get some of y'all's and get y'all's thoughts on where they stack rank is, and this will be a list of who I think's the best, not necessarily who I think was most accomplished.
Sure.
I'll show you my 5 is will hurt some of the older fans, but I've got Duncan at the 1. I think there's a little bit of space between him and the next guy, but I have Charles at the 2. I think just as far as playing wise, we talk about Charles flipping him with some of these other guys' situations. I think you see him in a different. And then my number 3 is Dirk. I think Dirk had one of the greatest seasons that you can point to as far as the path he had to go through, the team he had with him. I think what he did there was something that the rest of these guys never had to do. They actually KGs right after him, and he had a similar situation that he couldn't quite pull off with the. I mean, he's obviously one of the greatest power forwards of all time, but I drop him just slightly below. And the guy that's I would think a lot of people's number 2, some people didn't say number 1, is Malone. I think Malone got put in one of the best conversation or places, period, and being in a pick and roll situation where he had one shot that was 70% of his attempts was a catch from John Stockton, and hell, he was incredible. You got to give him love because he made it, and he was great at it, and he was a great rebounder. But he had a very simple thing. I think if you
coach too.
Yeah, he had the perfect situation. He's almost like that system quarterback to me, where he got put in the right spot. He had a good defense type thing, where not to cross sports. Like I just think he got put in a great situation where if you throw Barkley in with him, Barkley, that's defensive system, and Stockton, I think you throw the same thing. If you throw Dirk, I think they do more with less. Yeah. So that's my list is those 5. And
I wouldn't change much of that. I mean, mine would be Duncan, Dirk second. Just off bias.
When he's won one,
but then also off of MVP championship finals MVP. So Barkley 3rd, Malone 4th, KG 5th, and then honorable mention to Amari Stoudemire because obviously our list is based off of longevity and how long you can do it, how long you can be good at it. But if if anybody that didn't win a championship goes on that list or replaces number 5, it'd be Amari. But yeah, I'd say
I got a guy
Duncan,
over
Dirk,
Amari.
Barkley, Malone, KG. Who do you got, Johnny?
The guy I would replace Amari with, and I think he gets absolutely crapped on. And I literally want to go and like protest the Naismith Hall of Fame. I would take Chris Webber over Stoudemire.
So I wrote down
the second.
You love him. You talk to him all the time.
He's literally probably the second best passing big man.
He had a great team.
Yep.
Yeah, he did. Perfect team for him too. Those shooters. That was a good system for him to go to.
Yeah.
But so I would obviously Duncan, Barkley. Man, I'm not a huge fan of him, but I got to put KG up there. He's like, to me, he's the
KG over Dirk.
Yeah.
Oh,
I like Dirk. Don't get me wrong. I like Dirk, and I think I agree with y'all. I think he probably did something that almost it was ridiculous what he did to get to the finals. Like to go through the teams he went through, all the coaches, the players, the Hall of Famers. I just think KG wasn't necessarily ever put in the right system. So imagine KG.
I think that's fair, but my one critique on KG and why he loses is he never created that like post athleticism awesome offensive game. His at the end he didn't have all these like when he was athletic, super athletic, he just got his way, but he didn't. Tim Duncan, whenever he was working off one knee, Dirk, once he lost his step, like they still were going to get their bucket every time.
KG on offense after the athleticism came and went,
it was catch and shoot, pick and pop
15 foot, catch and pop, and the occasional three.
That's why he drops. That's why he drops a little bit to me. Is he just doesn't develop that even Barkley, he just didn't develop that. Now he stays in that conversation because out of all of them, defensively he's so unique. He can switch onto a guard, and you don't lose a thing. He's a shot blocker. He's also, is there a more legendary outside maybe MJ of like just competitive excellence for him, that's culture piece?
That's why I was always drawn to KG is the emotion.
Yeah,
like,
he's an
incredible.
Sean,
what 5 do you have, man?
I don't argue with Dustin's with his list of 5. The only thing that I change is I put Dirk second behind Duncan, only because I think what Dirk did in 11. Taking that Mavs team not only to the finals but beating LeBron and the Heat. I think a lot of people lost money on Vegas.
Wait, I might want to move him up for beating LeBron.
That's bad. That's not. That was LeBron guaranteeing.
As a LeBron hater,
not 1, not 2, not 3.
Yeah.
That's Dirk piecing together. And we talked about this. Like, who is the next best player behind Dirk on that 11 team?
Kid, right?
Kid or Terry,
an older Jason Kidd or a Jason
Both.
Terry.
But that's the thing though, dude. Like now, with all the super teams and stuff, like people look so far back and they say, oh well, in the 90s, Jordan didn't do that, or this guy didn't do that, and it's like, well, look just back to 2011, and that's a guy that got drafted with the team and came up with the team, and got their hearts broken in 2006. Did it all with a very minimal not minimal, but like with minimal star
Role
power help.
players, man.
Like the team they had was great. Like I mean that's my squad obviously, but he did it on his own as much as you could as a superstar. Like
What?
there's not too many people that could claim otherwise.
The only guy that maybe carried a team it's as much as and this is old school, but Rick Barry, that team he had, you won't know one other guy on that team.
I wasn't
What?
alive,
Yeah,
but
that's-
I'll
that's
take your
old
word
school.
for
All right,
it.
we'll take that bet.
Go-
I don't
go
know any of
back-
this. But wait,
Go
what's
back and watch it. That was some
what's
stuff.
Charles Barkley? Young Charles Barkley is in the 2020 draft. 6'4", power forward. You know, like I'm going to tell you this.
Does
I
he get to
think
go
he,
D2?
I think he murders in this league. I think he's an incredible. I think he might be better now than then, but just measurables wise, what is he a second rounder? Is like I think he's an
He's an
all
early
NBA
second
guy.
round. He's an early
No,
second rounder
guys.
that just surprises everybody.
He would've
Like, we
averaged-
couldn't have charted that.
guys. He would have averaged 25 rebounds in college in this era.
Where do you play?
He
Auburn?
would. He would have.
Yeah,
Right,
Auburn.
Auburn?
Yeah.
Dude, he was the round mound of rebound. He
Yeah.
would not have gone second round just because his college numbers would have been
There's
astronomical.
dudes that average great stats that a 6'4" power forward, the analytics, I really think he's not getting drafted in the lottery. I mean, maybe he's not a first round, but he's getting put. And I think I think he becomes an all NBA team, and I think his legacy might be even better today than it was then. I think he learns to develop the three a little bit. I think he can pick and pop. I think he becomes a more serviceable. I just think it's interesting to think about what, like we talked about,
sure.
the importance of measurables that an all-time great player is a 6'4.5" power forward.
That's an efficient guy too. Like that's
Yep.
not something you can say about every old school guy. It's like if you look at Barkley's numbers, man, like he's efficient, shooting efficient, and I mean stat stuffer. So that's the main argument against a lot of old school guys is, well, they're not, they don't fit analytics, and it's like, well, analytics would probably love Charles Barkley.
Well, you're talking about two guys, and you all described it. There's not really another Barkley. And there's not really another
No,
Dirk.
no.
Those are two guys that are like, there's no such thing. I mean, they compare Duncan to Bill Russell to a degree, but just not the offense.
So as we wrap up this and get to our pop culture events, any final thoughts, Johnny, from this game? Even though you only watched the first half, like the halftime show.
Man, I want to ask Sean, who would you have taken as the sixth guy to replace someone? Not Stoudemire or Weber, or is there another
Ooh,
outlier
I
guy?
have a favorite, and he's not going to be on anybody's top 10 power forward, but I just enjoy seeing him play basketball for what he did in I think it was the 2011 playoffs. But no, not Rasheed Wallace. It's Zach Randolph's game.
Hey,
Oh,
Zebo.
Yeah, it's
Correct. He's not
Zebo.
on my top 5 list.
Yeah.
He won't be on anybody's top 5 list, but he deserves a shout out.
Yeah. I love Tim Duncan, but I believe it's 11.
They gave him
when they-
business. Gave him the business.
He kind of made Duncan reconsider some things.
Zebo's so serious.
But I think that was important for Duncan to go through that and come back even stronger and lead the Spurs into two back-to-back finals runs. But Zebo is you can't deny, man. Playing against my best player, I love to watch Zebo play.
That's a man. Yeah.
So my final thoughts, being the bad student I was and getting an F. I was amazed just watching. I didn't know he ended up with 44 and 22 till y'all said that. And I'm sitting there looking at that game and I'm like, I see the first. That's what I really focused on, the first quarter, seeing what's going on. Made it to halftime. Holy crap, man! I'm gonna have to go back and watch that second half.
JB,
Man, one of my pet peeves is when people kind of like disrespect the level of the league, and so like, I don't like when people talk about players or teams lightly, because it's like almost all the time it's like, hey man, that's a level you'll never touch. You will never sniff. You didn't sniff 2 levels below that, and so it's like for me, was never touched an NBA court, but as a guy that's played quite a bit of basketball and been paid a little bit to do it, I just observe how far the game's come, I guess, was my main takeaway. Because when you're watching this, it's like every position today is more skilled, and it's like you can't bash you. It's not bashing the guys that played in the 80s and 90s and before that. It's just, if you're a real advocate for the game and you're a real ambassador of the game, if we're going TBE, it's like you want the game, you want people to get better. And so what I observed is that at every position now, even though Barkley is Barkley and later on Jordan is Jordan. Those guys can still be impressive, and we can still acknowledge that the game's come a long way, and that 1 through 12 or 1 through 15, the game is just on a completely different level, from everything from shooting to skills to everything. And it's just, when we were watching, it was like, wow, this is 27 years ago.
Yep.
This is the Western Conference Finals, and the game's just come a long way. That's what I took away from it.
John?
Kind of a similar message. I didn't come on here and say I was underwhelmed to disrespect that basketball in the era by any means at all. Charles Barkley was amazing, but it brought up the whole Jordan legacy thing as far as who did Jordan play in the finals. And not only is Jordan going to go on to obviously beat this 93 Suns team, but he's going to average 41 points doing it. And so like he does his own work and he lets his game speak for himself. But I think both guys, as far as Jordan and Barkley, I think they've been great ambassadors of the game. And similar to what you said, Justin, I think just being in our position now, I think it's cool to know that the game was in good hands and it continues to be in good hands moving forward.
Yeah. Dude, when you say that though, think about the Spurs through the Western Conference.
We can't keep
I'm just
debating on it though. We got
the era, the people they had to beat. That was the Western Conference was maybe the toughest 10 years when they were winning championships. The Western Conference was so much better than the East.
Absolutely.
And who'd they have to get through? It was crazy.
My big takeaways. I'm gonna try and do this really quick. One, I thought the commentators were horrendous,
Awful.
Like you've got a team that the winner of this game has to meet a team trying to three-peat, which is a historic great thing. You've got the greatest player in the league. Michael Jordan's his name's not mentioned. There's nothing about them until the 30-second mark left. They're praising the trapping of a guy who's not a top 12 player of all time and letting that guy get the second pass each time. They're like, every time George Karl runs a play that's to a contested mid-range shooter, instead of giving Sean Kemp the ball, every time they put Sean Kemp on Charles Barkley with 4 fouls in the third, and then shockingly Charles Barkley makes him draw a foul. Then I'm shocked whenever with 5 fouls, who's guarding Barkley? Oh, Kemp, you're one guy who could probably get you back in it with 5. And so, and then it'd go to George Karl.
Coaches almost.
It would go to George Karl, and George Karl would be shocked that Charles Barkley forced another foul. It's like, you've seen it 5 times before, but the 6th one still shocked him.
Maybe he's good at basketball.
And then the third thing was again, we started with it, Charles Barkley. We all know him, especially like us three. You got to watch him more live in his prime. I think the first thoughts that we think of with Charles Barkley is one of the great commentators of basketball in our time. He's a true basketball ambassador.
And hilarious when it comes to describing the women of our fair city.
Yes.
And so to get to see the back, when it's almost disrespectful for me to think of him first as a TNT analysis when he's a top 25 player of all time, top 3, top 4, lowest top 5 power forward of all time. So it was really cool to kind of get to remember him in that light. So I was really appreciative of that game. Not some of the other things were different, but getting to see true greatness in its action was awesome. So Charles Barkley was my number 1 and last takeaway. So let's
dude, he told a cop he would tattoo his name on his butt. That's a true story to get out of a ticket. Hero, legend.
And then going to closing, we're gonna have Johnny is that blitzing outside linebacker, just always forcing me to throw the hot route. So closing, let's start off with movies. I'm gonna go with one. I actually heard my person Sean watch for the first time a couple weeks ago. First of all, shame on you, Sean. But my movie was Shawshank Redemption. I rewatched it a couple weeks ago. I hadn't seen it in 10 years. And so I forgot little pieces of it, but it's one of those movies that you could jump in at almost any point and it's just like, okay, this is really good. I mean, they really do a great job of cliffhangers and they're leading you one way. And it's peak Morgan Freeman in that, narrating the whole time. Like, he's just at certain times is just awesome. So Shawshank Redemption is my movie. If you haven't seen it in a while, or if you're like Sean and a complete noob and haven't seen it before, I recommend you pop in your Shawshank Redemption cherry.
Thank you.
Little known fact about Shawshank Redemption: the screenplay had Morgan Freeman's character as a white guy.
Well,
And
that was
whoever
one of their
casted it-
recasts.
I'm glad they went.
Yeah,
It
the
was
other way.
Kevin Costner or someone like
Yep.
that was originally supposed to be him.
Did you,
Interesting.
Johnny? What are you leaving us
Hey,
with here?
side note on the Shawshank, Tom Cruise almost got the main character, whatever the guy's name is, the white guy.
Terrible.
Tom Cruise
Oh,
or
no.
Tom Hanks.
So Tom,
both could have been
definitely
No.
both similar
No.
to Tim Robbins.
I'll take Tom Hanks and
What-
Tim Robbins.
Fuck that. What do you got,
Tim
Johnny?
Robbins killed it.
I'm going old school again from the 70s. If you haven't seen The Outlaw Josie Wells, probably Clint Eastwood's best Western. Just totally awesome. You could watch it at any time. It won't really feel like an old movie. It's just really good. And it's a great story. Revenge.
JB.
We're this pop culture section we're in the middle of a pandemic and everybody's inside,
Uh-oh.
and so
Here
you
we
don't
go.
have any excuse not to watch this stuff, man. My viewing recommendation would be a series called The Rain. It's a Danish series it's on Netflix. Basically,
JB's so cultured.
man, I'm trying.
This-
This rain comes down. It's like, I don't know, this some pharmaceuticals company engineers something and it goes wrong. The rain comes down, turns people into just absolute monsters. And yeah, it's a tough one. The Rain on Netflix. Musically speaking, St. John is the artist. The album is called Ghetto Lenny's Love Songs. You won't be mad about it, and even if you are mad about it, it won't be like anything else you've ever listened to.
Does the rain switch people to MAGA voters too?
Let's get this
no.
Rain. Come on, Rain.
And then finally, man, the last thing that I'll
I
leave
like it.
everybody
He's just
with.
knocking them all out.
Yeah,
I like this.
I'm going out
This
with a
is
blast.
good.
In the middle of this COVID stuff, shout out to my mom for the Ninja Turtles mask, and then also shout out to my friend Taylor. She's made over I think 200 masks
That's big time.
to donate at the So it's every little thing counts. But yeah, shout out to my mom,
To the collective
and,
good.
shout out to people that make masks.
Sean?
Movie suggestion is one of my favorites. Is Lion with Dev Patel. Dev Patel is the lead actor on Slumdog Millionaire, which I think
Hey.
is one of the greatest
Good movie
movies.
too. Yeah.
It's a great movie.
Lion is it's amazing. The soundtrack to it is phenomenal. That's definitely this week's suggestion, man. Check it out.
So I'll wrap mine up, then wrap the series up. Johnny, if you have any more recommendations, I'll pause for a second. But my book, second shout out to Alex from Romania, told me to listen to Ender's Game. Little
Yes.
sci-fi, very solid. That's one where it's like
Second one's good too. Speaker of the Dead.
So
Very
I'm
good.
still on the first. Don't talk to me about that one yet. Then, but yeah, I like it a lot. And then show Ozark. I'm gonna be quick. Just watch it if you
Yeah.
haven't.
Hell yeah.
And then my podcast is Revisionist History by Malcolm Gladwell. Check those out if you have time. Johnny, any other recs?
The book would be Normal. I just finished it. It's about the DSM-4 and 5 and how we have all these pharmaceutical company problems because corporations get in and use that book the way they weren't supposed to and probably caused lots of deaths. Really good book. It'll help you understand a lot more about the mental health field.
Sean, can you send us home?
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to say, like, as an educator and a parent myself throughout this COVID-19 process, I think just do your part, however small you might think it is. Maybe doing your part, just staying home. But absolutely do your part for the well-being of all. And if you're a parent, make sure you're checking in with your kids as far as how their education is doing. I'll tell you right now, as a teacher, most of us don't know what we're doing right now. Let's sit here and admit that. But what we are trying our best to do is to show empathy, and so just trying to pass that thing along as much as we can to help each other out to get through this thing.
Peace out. See you guys next Wednesday.